This is a virtual reading of Conspirators, To Each His Own Agenda by Mag Gupta.
Chapter 19. The Seaward Highway. Gaylorn's head was ringing with the sounds of the feast long after it had finished. He couldn't sleep, a problem that few in the city seemed to share. The entire hall was filled with the drunken heaps of bodies. Many of them had simply fallen over where they were sitting. Turgon had fallen asleep on a table, with 5 or 6 of the serving girls around him, all of whom had lost some item of clothing. His head had disappeared in between a set of legs, and any chance of it emerging seemed remote at best. Gaylorn chuckled at this sight and examined one of the serving girls who had her breasts exposed. His manhood twitched under his trousers, and he had to shake himself. He made to the entrance of the hall to escape his temptation. This room wasn't any better, only many more people were naked and exposed. He averted his eyes and made for the door. The stairway was so crowded he would have been a fool to attempt it. The night was brightly lit by the stars, and from his position, he could clearly see the whole city. The ocean stretched on like a blanket of ink. The Mare Turim shone as a giant spire of pure light. Even from here, he could see men abseiling from the top and attaching decorations to the tower walls. He admired their courage, but he ended up wondering if he could shoot one of them from here with his bow. A wisp of smoke floated past him. He looked to one side and saw Aquila standing on a corner of the balcony that ran around the palace. He was staring out into the distance, but to the north. He was sucking on his pipe. Clearly his thoughts were far away. Gaylorn watched him for a moment, then made to turn away. But then Aquila said, "If you want to spy on someone, stay upwind." Gaylorn laughed awkwardly. "Normally I don't stink of ale, but I'll remember that for the next time I spy on you." "Please do." Aquila puffed out a large cloud of smoke and walked over to him. "Can't sleep?" "I have trouble sleeping in places of high lords," Gaylorn admitted. "The last time I was in a city, I ended up on trial, and some people tried to have me hanged. It's put me off not watching my back with nobility." Aquila sighed. "Yes, that may have been an error." "May have been?" Aquila didn't have the strength to go into this again. His talk with Felthor had robbed him of all of his enthusiasm for anything now. He shook his head. "You should try to get some sleep. I have a lot on my mind as it is." Gaylorn sighed. "Very well. Good night, my lord." "Good night." Aquila didn't even turn his head. He simply continued looking to the north. The dawn came with a great ringing of bells and crashing of waves on the harbour walls. The city woke up in an instant, alive with bustle and cheers. It was the morning of the royal wedding. Everyone had been planning for this moment for nearly a year. The Mare Turim was covered in flowers and banners of House Steward and Sea Ward. Turgon woke with a creaking groan, disentangling himself from the semi-naked women he was interwoven with. He let out a laugh and helped himself to another flagon of ale. Julius was very awake. He hadn't partaken in any alcohol, so he was already dressed and ready for anything. He was eating with Felthor and Callisto as she prepared. Felthor was slightly worse for wears, but he was making a conscious effort to appear normal. He was dressed in the blue and black clothing of Islesfield, easily confused with the colour coordination of the Seaward lords. Richard was awoken by his squire Edric. He was cautious to approach. Richard was asleep in his bed, with 4 dogs and half a roast chicken. Edric tried stepping past the dogs, and ended up stepping on a highly expensive plate. One of the dogs looked up at him, looking just as hungover as the men in the hall. It huffed at his presence and laid its head back down on Richard's exposed foot. "Sire," Edric whispered in Richard's ear. Richard woke with a huge bark and grabbed Edric by the throat. "It's time for your bath, sire," Edric said, past the sounds of choking. He was used to this morning ritual. Richard growled. His teeth seemed freshly sharp. "Come now, father," Tiberius said. He appeared in the room in a blood-red shirt and dark brown trousers. "The sooner you bathe, the sooner we can eat. Leave your bitches to sleep. They'll need all the rest they can get before the next hunt." Richard scowled and pushed the dog off his arm. It simply rolled over and exposed its stomach. He staggered to his feet and crashed his face straight into his bath. After a long moment, he didn't come back up. Edric waited patiently next to him, but after a worrying amount of time, he looked to Tiberius, who sighed and helped him pull up their king before he drowned. He'd gone back to sleep, and the water was causing his lips to slack. Tiberius sighed. "It's going to be one of those mornings, I see." Decimus was in the citadel throne room in the palace with Alistair. Alistair was sitting in the prince's throne, a huge black stone chair that closely resembled the throne in House Steward. Decimus was examining himself in a huge mirror. He was wearing a white toga with a slit up one leg with a silver cross of House Steward on it, with a black cloak with golden embroidery on it. "Well," he said to Alistair, "are you attending someone's funeral or marrying my favoured daughter?" "This is the Kingdom Royal dress code," Decimus said. "You gave it to me. We wear black to our royal weddings, coronations and funerals," Alistair muttered to himself. "What does that say about our kingdom?" Decimus laughed. "I remember my father telling me about his royal wedding, constantly telling me how much he wanted to run, throw up, and take a shit all at the same time." "I had mine at sea," Alistair agreed. "When I was young, I had the worst seasickness, so I can relate to that. How are you feeling?" "Nothing." Decimus shook his head as the outfit was removed. "I felt more nervous when I was delivering my academy speech." "You are a classic politician," Alistair smiled. "What you need is a scepter. Make up a political pose." "All in good time, my friend," Decimus said. He tensed up as a serving girl came over to lather his muscles that would be exposed by the outfit in oil. "Or should I call you father?" "Absolutely not," Alistair pointed a threatening finger at him. "Your father would make my life so irksome if you do. You put too much value in my father's power to make your life irksome." "You've never run a kingdom yourself." Alistair sighed deeply, his eyes closed as he dealt with his own morning hangover. "The less headaches you have, the much easier things go. Also, more importantly, those headaches could very quickly turn into you losing your head, and since I've worked so hard to get you support, I would rather you didn't lose it before it's time." "No pressure," Decimus smiled. "Oh gods, she's really expecting something great in the bedding, isn't she?" "Oh, so now you're nervous?" "The bedding is nothing to worry about." Turgon entered the hall. "Just keep charging in until she can't stand any more." "That is my daughter you're talking about." Alistair irritably looked at where Turgon had appeared from. "Perhaps I should throw you in the dungeon for a year or so." "We should make it 2 just to be on the safe side," Tiberius smiled. "You two are up bright and early." "Of course," Alistair held up his arms in a shrug. "We men of Sea Ward never sleep, though at times we wish we did. Even when we're told to by young men with no sense of dignity." Alexis wheezed from a doorway to the side. He was being escorted in by a man who was clearly in disapproval of his absence from his bed. Alistair jumped out of the throne. "Father," he blurted, everyone seemed to be materializing out of thin air. "What are you doing here?" "I would examine the man who is stealing my favored grandchild from me." Alexis limped towards them, his eyes on Decimus's silhouette. "And that is my chair you were sitting in," he added over his shoulder. "I've been sitting in it for nearly 2 years now, Father," Alistair smiled. "I am the Prince of Seaward, my son," Alexis coughed. He placed a vague hand on his son's chest. "But you are right. Perhaps I should have you crowned prince before my long life ends in a bloody mess." "Perhaps you should," Decimus agreed. "He's the prince in all but name." Callisto was watching them, carefully concealed in the shadows above them. Julius and Felthor were with her. Julius smiled. "He looks ridiculous, doesn't he?" "I suppose that's why I'm not supposed to see him before he shoves his tongue down my throat," Callisto grimaced. "Yes, probably," Julius smirked. He placed a hand on her exposed shoulder. "You seem very unenthused about this. Would you like to have some herbs to make you happy? You loved them when we were kids." It was a secret she didn't want publicly known, and as a result, she started to blush. "Well, maybe I should start taking what your grandfather is taking," Felthor said, from the shadows behind them. "If I ended up being as old as him, I would be more than happy." "He's still getting older," Callisto sighed. The blush had gone, and she was now looking quite depressed. "I worry about him all the time." She took Julius's hand and grasped it tightly. "As do I," Julius said. "I just hope he can see his kingdom see peace before he passes." "Don't say that," Callisto snapped. "That's the last thing I need to think of." "Do not worry," Felthor wrapped an arm around her. "Your grandfather can't die. Death gave up on him years ago. It's nowhere near that patient." Callisto couldn't help but laugh. "I have missed you, Felthor." "Come," Julius beckoned, his tone disapproving as Felthor embraced her. "Let's get you ready for your doom." "I can't wait to hear you give a speech on the battlefield," Felthor smiled, watching them leave. The wedding was beyond grand. The bells at the top of the Mare Turim had not stopped ringing since sunrise, and it was now well into the afternoon. The ceremony was like all in the kingdom were. The High Priest of Seaward, a man with a wart on his chin, presided. He was dressed in a robe of so many different colors, he seemed to be clad in a rainbow. He had something of a droning voice that could only be found in the temple courts of the wealthy. It had made the ceremony much longer than it needed to be. Finally, Decimus was allowed to kiss his bride, after a golden knot was tied around his and Callisto's wrists. She kissed him back in a brief but proud kiss. She didn't take her gaze off of him, watching him with a hunger. Not until the crowd stood up and started throwing confetti at them as they departed together did she turn away to look at her father, who nodded to her as a proud father would look upon his favored son. They were paraded through the streets of Seaward at a pace that rivaled the movement of broken siege equipment. Callisto and Decimus sat upon an ornate stone set of steps on a platform that was being drawn by 6 horses and was being pushed by nearly 20 men. The high lords of the kingdom and horseland were on horseback, behind a procession of dancers dressed in revealing ribbon-like clothing. Behind them were sword jugglers and acrobats. Behind these were fire dancers and men who were jumping in and out of flaming hoops. The men of the kingdom nobility walked behind them, making a show of their wealth and power, clad in the white and red robes of the citadel court, or simply blue silks of the seaward courts. The landowners of the kingdom continued the procession. Some young, some old, nearly all were unidentifiable, aside from those on horseback, and looked more regal. Behind them was a man on another platform, but a simple wooden one. He was setting off fireworks into the air, exploding in showers of colour, most of which was lost in the sunlight, however. "How much time is spent in pompous praise?" Decimus said to his bride. There was no need for whispers. She laughed, for the first time since she was married. Traditions seem to be the source of our strength and yet our largest oddity. "Your father said something similar when I was trying on the wedding robes." "I know," Callisto smiled, somewhat wickedly. "I was watching." "You were?" Decimus's eyes widened slightly. "How much did you see?" "Enough," Callisto smiled, waving to a group of people off in the distance. "I was already aware that men of politics overcompensate in some areas. Luckily, I found that to be false, in your case." "Do you think so?" Decimus said, smiling at this taunt. "I await a full examination then." "Most men do." Callisto looked straight at her husband. This was a business talk they were discussing now, not one of love or affection. "I look forward to the result then, for better or worse." "You don't like men, do you?" "I dislike that power goes to people whose hearts and minds dangle between their legs." "Is it power that you seek then, my lady?" "Of course. I seek the ability to move men and their minds to my own gain," Callisto confessed. "I would be queen in the world of my dreams." Decimus nodded in amusement. "Then you will be my queen. I promise you this. When we ascend to the throne of the marble city, you will be queen." "Beware your promise, my lord, for I will hold you to it." Callisto held him with a firm stare. "It will not be a promise you will break without significant loss." "My lady," Decimus bowed, "you are as fierce as you are beautiful. I am honored to be your husband. You have my word and my life." "And your heart?" "My heart dangles between my legs, my lady." Decimus grinned mockingly. "It is yours to wield as it is mine." Callisto laughed again. "I think this will work out very well." She took his hand and stood up on the stone stairs. They held their hands up high, and the crowd roared its approval. "He takes to the title of royalty as if he were born to it," Alistair said aloud, conveniently riding next to Ignatius. The next phase of his plan commenced, and Ignatius took the bait. "He was born to it," Ignatius grumbled irritably, as if Alistair had interrupted something. "He is my son." "Now he is our son," Alistair nodded. "Indeed," Ignatius glowered. Then he turned to Alistair. "Prince, we should end this bitterness here. My father once told me to treat my enemies right in case I am found wanting. Now our blood has been united. I would have you by my side. My father told me that we must always forgive our enemies, for nothing vexes them more." Alistair smiled. Ignatius scoffed. "Which is the wiser, I wonder?" "We are both spawns of wise men, I fear." Alistair looked out into the distance. The Mare Turim was a tower of blinding light in the sun. He could not keep his gaze on it for long. "I fear we are not as different as I once thought." Alistair nodded sadly. "In the world we were meant to rule, we could have ruled as brothers." "What do you think happened to deprive us of that brotherhood?" "Only what the Father above allowed. It was no fault of our own. We are the men the world has made us to be. And yet we are still enemies in this arena we have created." "Yes, we are. It has been fun, though." "It has," Ignatius agreed. Then Alistair sighed and bowed his head. "In the spirit of variety, let us have a moment of peace. Then, when our crops are harvested and our coffers filled, then we shall be back at each other's throats." Ignatius didn't need long to think on this. Then he nodded. He offered out his hand to Alistair, and the prince took his whole arm in friendship. "What is the kingdom worth?" he said. more to himself than to Alistair. "Nothing," Alistair answered reassuredly. Ignatius looked at him with something resembling confusion. "There was a dream that was the kingdom. That dream has gone, and we do what we can with what we have. The king's land is in the heart of the people. That is what we must preserve. Let the cities fall if need be." An easy thing to say when you own towns and villages. I do not have such luxury. I don't think it will be for us to decide though, my lord. I know in my heart the kingdom will see its most terrible times after I am gone. I am alive in this life. I would see the kingdom survive until it ends. As will I, Ignatius nodded. Have I been too stubborn to realize any truth in what you have requested of me? Not stubborn, Alistair said, just proud. Are they not the same? Alistair inclined his head, realizing Ignatius's point. Ignatius laughed. It was a strange sight compared to his usual solemnness. Come, let us see our families unite and enjoy this peace they bring us. I could just do with a drink, Alistair sighed. But very well,